This committee should be about oversight. It should be about preventing and punishing crime, but it should also be about calling out federal agents who are using their authority and legal force improperly. We can do both at the same time, and our Constitution demands that we do both at the same time. And when this committee just decides to take one side and not admit when something is wrong, and I'm not here to say it's always the Republicans who do that. Sometimes Democrats do that too. But we need to come together and say when enough is enough. And it's only getting worse. It is getting worse. Because this committee doesn't exercise that kind of oversight.
On Capitol Hill, a sharp warning echoed through a House committee room as Congresswoman Deborah Ross of North Carolina took aim at what she described as dangerous and unchecked immigration enforcement under the Trump administration. Her message was not about partisan talking points. It was about accountability, constitutional limits, and the real lives caught in the middle. If you want reporting that explains why these moments matter beyond the clip you just watched, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you do not miss future coverage.
Support it.
In
addition to what has happened yesterday.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentlelady from North Carolina is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I know that my colleagues have talked about the situation in Minnesota, which is appalling on so many levels. But this isn't just happening in Minnesota. ICE and CBP are exceeding their jurisdiction all over this country, and they're doing it with almost no consequences. Even my Republican senator, Senator Tillis, has been asking for accountability for how ICE and CBP have been operating in North Carolina. They have been picking up U.S. citizens, literally making them feel like they've been kidnapped. I had a woman in my district who was just swept up. She had done everything right. She had work authorization. She came here as a child. She had an attorney. She ended up spending a month in detention before our government said, whoops, it's Christmas. She's been all over the news. Maybe we should let her out. Thank God she got out. But she should have never been picked up in the first place. And now, when our citizens are saying enough is enough, do what you said you were going to do. Go after violent criminals. We're all for that. Every single one of us is for going after people who have a violent criminal history, the repeat offenders that I know my colleague, Mr. Knott, talks about. But we are not here to assault our citizens. And we are not here to allow the federal government to violate the rights of people who are protesting or may just be trying to turn their car around. This committee should be about oversight. It should be about preventing and punishing crime, but it should also be about calling out federal agents who are using their authority and legal force improperly. We can do both at the same time, and our Constitution demands that we do both at the same time. And when this committee just decides to take one side and not admit when something is wrong, and I'm not here to say it's always the Republicans who do that. Sometimes Democrats do that too. But we need to come together and say when enough is enough. And it's only getting worse. It is getting worse. Because this committee doesn't exercise that kind of oversight, the ranking member of the Immigration Subcommittee has had to have her own hearings. At our last hearing, we had more than 20 members, not members of this committee, show up and talk about abuses of ICE and CBP. We haven't had one hearing on that in this official committee. We haven't had one expression of even unpleasantness with that from the other side of the aisle. It is time that this committee does its job. I am so grateful that we actually have a ranking member who's not only doing her job, but the job of the whole committee. She is bringing this to light, and it has got to stop. And with that, I will yield my final minute to the ranking member of the Immigration Subcommittee.
Thank you, Ms. Ross, and thank you for your kind comments, and thank you for all of the people on this committee and beyond who have come to those.
Ross began by addressing recent incidents that have drawn national attention, including events in Minnesota, but she was clear that the problem does not stop at one state. According to Ross, Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Customs and Border Protection are exceeding their authority across the country, often with little to no meaningful oversight or consequences. She emphasized that this is not just a Democratic concern, pointing out that even Republican Senator Thom Tillis of North Carolina has publicly called for greater accountability from these agencies. One of the most powerful moments in her remarks came when Ross described a case from her own district. A woman who had lived in the United States since childhood, had work authorization, legal representation, and had followed the rules, was nevertheless detained by immigration authorities. She spent a month in detention before being released, a decision Ross suggested only came after public pressure and media attention. Ross stressed that this woman should never have been picked up in the first place, underscoring how easily lawful residents and even U.S. citizens can be swept into enforcement actions. Ross made a key distinction that often gets lost in political debate. She stated clearly that lawmakers across the aisle agree on targeting violent criminals and repeat offenders. The disagreement, she argued, is about whether enforcement should come at the expense of citizens' rights and constitutional protections. In her words, the federal government is not here to assault its own citizens, nor to violate the rights of people who are peacefully protesting or simply trying to navigate daily life. If you value coverage that breaks down these nuances rather than reducing everything to slogans, take a moment to subscribe so you stay informed. Ross reminded the committee of its fundamental role, oversight. She argued that Congress has a responsibility not only to prevent and punish crime, but also to investigate and call out federal agents who misuse their authority. In a constitutional system, she said, law enforcement power must be balanced by accountability, and the Constitution demands that both public safety and civil liberties be protected at the same time. She also acknowledged that no party is immune from blind spots, stating that Democrats can fail at accountability too. But her frustration was directed at what she described as a pattern of silence from the committee majority when abuses by ICE and CBP are raised. Ross noted that despite widespread concerns, the committee has not held a single official hearing focused on alleged misconduct by immigration agents. Instead, she said, the ranking member of the Immigration Subcommittee has been forced to hold separate hearings to bring these issues to light. At one such hearing, more than 20 lawmakers who were not even members of the committee showed up to share stories of alleged abuses. To Ross, that turnout underscored how urgent and widespread the concern has become. She warned that the situation is getting worse, not better, precisely because oversight has been lacking. Without hearings, investigations, or even acknowledgement that something may be wrong, she argued that there is little incentive for federal agencies to change their behavior. If you want continued coverage that explains how congressional oversight works and what happens when it fails, be sure to subscribe. Ross concluded by thanking the ranking member for stepping up, not only doing her job, but, in Ross's words, doing the job of the entire committee. She called for bipartisan recognition that when enforcement crosses legal and ethical lines, it must be confronted, regardless of party. This exchange highlights a broader debate playing out in Washington: how to enforce immigration laws while respecting constitutional rights, and what role Congress should play when federal power appears to go too far. It is a debate that affects citizens and non-citizens alike, and one that will likely intensify as immigration remains a central issue in national politics. For more reporting that goes beyond the clip to explain the stakes, the systems, and the human impact, make sure you subscribe to the channel.